come to the top of the stretch and is off the turn in front. The leader by a length and a half. British Idiom on the outside second, past his third at the rail. And then Perfect Alibi, who's got to pick it up for along the run. Donna Veloce, British Idiom confronts her. And Donna Veloce digs down deep. Donna Veloce and British Idiom. British Idiom ahead in front as they come to the wire. Donna Veloce battles on, but British Idiom won it.
Welcome back to another edition of the Racing Rundown on YouTube. And today we have a really nice race preview for you. We'll be covering the Fantasy Stakes from Oaklawn this upcoming Friday, May 1st. Obviously this week we'd generally be putting out loads of content for the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks and all the great undercard races that go along on those 2 days. But unfortunately with the circumstances this year, that is not going to be happening until September. So we have a really nice consolation, though, not only this race, the Fantasy on Friday, basically acting as a replacement for the Kentucky Oaks, but also the two divisions of the Arkansas Derby tomorrow that we will also be covering here on YouTube. So in this preview, I'm just going to go horse by horse, kind of give a little glimpse into what they've done so far in their career, spend a little bit more time on the major contenders, kind of just being unbiased, giving, what they've done, their resumes, and then I'll go a little bit more into how I'm looking at this race, trying to pick the winner in this spot. So we have a full field of 14 set to go. One horse, the one Ice Princess, is cross-entered in the Gardenia, the race before race 8 at Oaklawn, which is basically like the secondary. It's basically the horses that didn't make the cut for the Fantasy. She made the cut for both, entered in both. We don't know which one she's going to go in. But we'll start with Ice Princess, 3 for 4 lifetime, all wins in State Bred Company in New York. One stakes race last time out, that was in late February. She hasn't raced since then, so a bit of a layoff, but her trainer, Danny Gargan, is pretty strong off of them. Her one try against Open Company was the Grade 1 Frisette in start number 2. She ran 4th behind 3 very nice fillies in Wicked Whisper, Frank Roquette, and Slam Dunk. She's shown a lot of promise throughout her career, winning all those New York bred races by open lengths. The question is, can she, take that restricted company, quality efforts and put them against Open Company from the rail? If she were to run in this race, I would be a little bit skeptical against some of the other horses we're going to talk about in this race. The two, the morning line favorite, and deservedly so, it's Venetian Harbor. She is 2 for 3 lifetime for trainer Richard Baltus. Flavian Pratt's been aboard for 2 of those efforts. Her Lone Moss was her first start over the grass, going 5 furlongs, and she ran a bang up race. But we're finding out right now that she's not that kind of horse. She's a 2-turn dirt horse, and after getting on the dirt, she's won her last 2 races by a combined 19 1/4 lengths. The Lost Virginess last time out, the big score there. She was just absolutely toyed with that field. Wire to wire effort. Flavian Pratt, obviously an outstanding rider, guided her well. The big thing with her, honestly, though, looking at those 2 dirt efforts, is she's had no competition on the front end, and that's not going to be a possibility in this spot. So it's going to be interesting to see what she's able to do here with that competition. But listen, it's hard to knock a filly that's done what she's done in her last 2 races. The 3, Swiss Skydiver, Kenny McPeak is the trainer of this filly, who broke through last time in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, winning by 3 lengths. Gets Brian Hernandez Jr. back. Paco Lopez was aboard for that last effort. Hernandez rode her in the Rachel Alexandra, finishing behind Finite in British Idiom. She's been losing to good fillies in just about every single loss. 2 for 5 lifetime, her only off-the-board finish. She only lost by 3/4 of a length, finishing 5th in a stakes race. So not necessarily any bad efforts on her resume. That Gulfstream Park Oaks, was really impressive, but she won it because she set a very slow pace on the front end, a half in 49 flat and 3/4 in 1:13 1/5 seconds. And that's not looking like a possibility here. That was the first time actually in a race she was the pace setter. So you do kind of question what she's going to be able to do with more competition coming from the 2 Venetian Harbor and a couple other horses I'm going to touch on in a second. The 4 Lake Avenue, the winner of the Demoiselle last fall, or I guess last winter, early December last year, and she was really impressive in that effort. But it's her last 2 starts, both in 2020, have been a little subpar. Her Gulfstream Park Oaks might look a little better on video than it was on paper, but nevertheless, it was not what we had seen in her best performances as a 2-year-old. The Butcher, probably a race you can draw a line through. One thing I do like about Lake Avenue is that she is going 2 turns. She's obviously a better 2-turn filly. I do think that if she's able to get a stalking trip, she might be in better shape. I was really high on her last year, but her last 2 efforts have really kind of thrown me off. She needs a good trip to be competitive. This filly, a Godolphin homebred, trained by Bill Mott. John Velasquez is going to climb aboard for the first time here in this spot, out of the Grade 1 winning mare 7th Street by Tappet. So a really nice pedigree, and she's backed it up a little bit to this point in her career. The 5, Harvey's Little Goyle, and I mean, if you're going to get 12 to 1, she's 12 to 1 on the morning line, and if you're going to get that price on race day, it would not be a bad idea to just put 5 across the board and hopefully get lucky, because this filly's 2 wins in her last 2 starts have both been impressive. 2 for 3 lifetime, a daughter of American Pharoah. First start of her career was on the grass, kind of Venetian Harbor-esque almost in a way. First start was on the grass, didn't win despite being well backed, and she actually did lose to some good grass fillies in that spot. But when she switched to dirt, broke her maiden at Aqueduct, followed that up with a 7.5 length win in the Busanda. And one big thing I do like about this filly, she's going to be, probably mid-pack. She's going to come from off the pace, and that's going to go a long way in this race. That's something I'll talk about in a little bit. Martin Garcia aboard for the first time. Junior Alvarado not shipping in to ride any mounts down at Oaklawn this weekend. But Harvey's Little Goyle, 2 really impressive wins. The big question, but with her, honestly, is going to be, stepping up in class. Can she beat this kind of group in her first start against Grade 1? The Fantasy's not a Grade 1 race, but this is Grade 1 company if I've ever seen it. So it's going to be interesting to see how she handles it. The 6, Kansas Kiss, a New York-based filly. All of her starts have came in New York at the 3 Naira tracks. Her last 5 actually at Aqueduct. 1 for 7 lifetime, but only missing the board once in her career. That was career start number 2. Big question here, probably more than anything. Can she get 2 turns? This is going to be the first time she's done that. She's been battle tested. She's faced a lot of solid horses. Maybe not necessarily winning those races, but last time out in the Busher, she did nearly win that race, going a mile. She about halfway down the stretch, she looked like a clear winner. She led by 3 lengths coming around the far turn, and just got caught late. She ran an excellent race, nevertheless. Against Florent Giroux, who's a very talented rider, especially at Oaklawn, a daughter of the very talented sire Constitution as well. She's going to be a long shot in here. I personally don't find much of a reason why I would pick her, but her last 2 efforts have been really good despite them being both seconds, and who knows. Her pedigree does suggest that the 2 turns is something she's going to love, and she's never ran 2 turns. Her last race was her first time going any further than 7 furlongs, so perhaps more distance will do better for her. She's a big-bodied filly, too. That could definitely be to her aid. The 7, She Dares a Devil, the winner of the local prep. She won the Honeybee last time out in only her second start for trainer Brad Cox. This filly's had a little bit of a weird career. Broke her maiden for Norm Cassie really impressively last June. Then was privately purchased by Cutter Racing, sent to Simon Callahan. 3 very dull efforts on the West Coast. Comes back to the Midwest, put in the Brad Cox barn. Staten Fleury, a Midwest-based owner, buys a piece of her, puts her with Cox, and she is now 1 for 2. Her only loss for Cox coming in a second place effort behind Bonnie South, and she finished ahead of Jilted Bride, who's come back to win an allowance race at the Oaklawn meet really impressively. Her Honeybee win was very nice, a decent speed figure, not one that's going to, break any records, but good nonetheless. Joelle Rosario does hop aboard in this spot. He's going to be aboard for the first time in this race, but I think it's a bonus. Joe Talmo, an excellent rider in his own right, but I think if you can get Joelle Rosario, it's kind of hard to go against him. She's also going to be coming a little bit off the pace, probably mid-pack. I'd say in this group, probably 7th or 8th. And she's going to look like she's going to get a good trip. She has all the potential in the world. She just hasn't put it together every time. But, like I said with Harvey's Little Goyle, She Dares the Devil's 12 to 1 on the morning line. And if you get anything remotely close to that, it's not a bad idea to just put some money down, see if you can get lucky, because she does look like a very talented filly. Brad Cox at Oaklawn is never a bad idea. Moving on to the 8 now, Ringleader. Kind of a sprinter trying to make it here, going 2 turns, possibly crack the Oaks Trail. Joe Talmo does get aboard again in this spot. He's ridden her in two of her five starts, one which was a win in the Dixie Belle earlier on in the Oaklawn meet. But that was 3 starts ago. Her last 2 have been off the board finishes, a 5th in the Honeybee, an 8th in the Purple Martin behind Dares the Devil, and then Kamari. And she had a horrible start in the Purple Martin. That's a huge excuse. She could have ran a lot better. She's a filly that needs the lead, and she's going to make it hard for Venetian Harbor and Lake Avenue and Swiss Skydiver because she's going to want to be on the front end. Definitely is going to be a huge pace factor in this race, if anything else. I don't know, though, if she's a horse you can consider for any win bets or any exotics, because she just doesn't seem like the type of filly who's going to want to go 2 turns in this spot. The 9, another long shot, Lady Glamour. You can't really make a case for this filly. 5 stake starts. Wow. 5 stake starts, only 1 graded stakes. And while she has hit the board in a couple of those stakes, she just has been well beaten most of the time. And there's been a lot of times she hasn't really shown much. Last time out, the Purple Martin was 6th, beaten 12 lengths at almost 80-1 by Kamari at this track. It's hard to make a case for this filly. Even her pedigree suggests she probably doesn't want to go much further than a mile. So you can't really make a case a low percentage trainer, a low percentage rider. If she wins, she's going to prove the world wrong because I don't think she goes off any higher than 60-1. The 10, the 2-year-old filly champion. I mean, it's not too common you see the 2 champion 2-year-olds from the year prior return on the same weekend to not running necessarily against each other, but to be racing on the same weekend. It's quite a treat that I think is kind of being overlooked as we head into this great weekend of racing. British Idiom, the 2-year-old filly champion, 3 races, 3 wins last year. Obviously capped off by that big win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies over Donna Veloce and Bast, who both came back to win graded stakes, among others. It's proved to be a very strong race, and before that, a dominant winner of the Alcibiades. Her first start, though, in 2020, not so good, beaten almost 5 lengths, a second place effort in the Rachel Alexander behind Finite. But the horse that finished behind her was Swiss Skydiver, and Swiss Skydiver, we already touched on her, came back to win the Gulfstream Park Oaks. And, I mean, listen, Brad Cox is not necessarily bad off the layoff. He does very well with horses that haven't raced in a while. British Idiom had not ran in 4 months, but she came back and she didn't really run the kind of British Idiom race we'd been used to seeing. And that might just be the kind of horse she is. I really think that this is a filly who's going to put her best foot forward in this spot. And the fact of the matter is, the Fairgrounds is a weird track for a horse running there for the first time. You're either going to love it or you're not going to like it so much. And I do think that might have been the case with this filly. That weekend in general, the Risen Star weekend, also had the Rachel Alexandra on that card. It's proved to be a very productive weekend. We saw the top 2 in the Oaklawn Stakes return from the Risen Star. So it's obviously been a very productive weekend coming out of there. So I think British Idiom's primed for a solid bounce back performance. The 11 Fire Coral, steadily improving filly, 2 for 3 lifetime, lost her first career start, then back-to-back wins in Maiden and Allowance Company, both at Oaklawn, both at this distance for the hot connections of Steve Asmussen and Tyler Bays, who's having a pretty solid meet down at Oaklawn Park. The big thing here is if she's going to be able to handle the step up in company. I mentioned a filly named Jilted Bride earlier, who came back to win an allowance race. She lost to Fire Coral in her last start. So obviously some solid back class there. Out of a solid AP Indy mare by Curlin. So distance is never going to be a problem with this filly, no matter how far she goes. Bought for $420,000 as a yearling as well. So a lot of good things surrounding this filly and very impressive back-to-back wins. The speed figures on her are a little light, but she's shown a lot of class. If you're looking for a horse to upset those tried and true stakes horses, this is going to be your horse. The 12 New York Groove. This is going to be her first start on dirt. Her first 4 races came on the all-weather at both Presque Isle Downs and Woodbine. And then her last start in the Florida Oaks, she ran 12th and last after kind of a rough trip. Was 4 for 4 before that, though, including a win in the Presque Isle Debutante and then a listed stakes at Woodbine as well. So she has stakes experience and wins in them. Pedigree-wise, she should be able to translate to the dirt. Verrazano out of a pulpit mare. It's easy to see why she was so good on the all-weather there, but at the same time, I do think she might be able to translate that ability. Steward Elliott will be aboard for this race, and she worked well last time out. I might add, fired a bullet in some really good works before that, all on the dirt. It's really just a question of if she can handle the dirt. Honestly, maybe a decent long shot look if all goes well. She's not going to get a good trip, but at the end of the day, if you're looking for a very live long shot, and she's going to be a long shot for sure, she might be your horse. 13 Lazy Daisy, the winner of the Pocahontas last fall. This is going to be her first start since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, in which she ran sixth. Not a good race for her. Ran into trouble on the first turn, and it was pretty much over from there. But that Pocahontas win was impressive, and she beat some solid fillies in that spot. It's just going to be a question of whether she can bounce back off this layoff. Doug O'Neill, a fine trainer off the layoff, so I think that she has a good chance, but at the same time, she is facing some really tough company here. So I don't know if necessarily this is the best return spot. I would have loved to have seen her in a race like the Gardenia. Race 8, probably easier for her to handle in a comeback race, but we'll see. Doug O'Neill, always capable of throwing a surprise out there, and this filly does have some really good graded stakes experience. David Cohen aboard for the first time too, one of the leading riders at the Oaklawn meet. And the final horse in this 14-horse field is Altos Reward, another Steve Asmussen. This is the one Ricardo Santana sided with. I can't blame him either. The winner of second in the Honeybee last time out, a winner of 2 starts before then, both at the fairgrounds, in which she beat some solid fillies, most notably Portrait, a Brad Cox filly who showed a lot of promise early in her career. That second in the Honeybee, she was the favorite. She ran a really good race, just couldn't get by She Dares the Devil. I like her because she's coming from off the pace. She does seem like she's eligible to run another good race. She's always been very consistent, and Ricardo Santana, always good at Oaklawn. You can never fault him. And one of the more interesting stats here, Steve Asmussen, who's already a high percentage trainer in his own right, but he never seems to be a higher percentage than when he's coming back with a beaten favorite. This filly was the favorite in the Honeybee last time, lost, and when Steve Asmussen runs a horse back after being the beaten favorite, he's nearly 25%. So obviously very high percentage there. A lot of high percentage things surrounding this filly. Decent speed figures as well. So, like I've mentioned, with a bunch of horses in this field, there's a lot of talent in this race throughout, and because of that, you're going to get some nice prices. Another filly who, if she's 15 to 20 to 1, might be one to put a few dollars down on, see if you can get lucky. So how I'm looking at this race, the speed in this race, I already mentioned it a couple times. There's a lot of early speed that I'm expecting here, mainly from posts 2, 3, and 4 with Venetian Harbor, Swiss Skydiver, and Lake Avenue. But also expect some from Fire Coral from the outside, and the sprinter ringleader. She's going to be up there too, and she's going to want that lead because she runs her best when she gets to the front. So my guess is that those fillies are going to tire each other out. I am off Venetian Harbor, the heavy favorite, because of it. I just think, she's gone fast in her races. In the Lost Version, she set a half mile in 46 3/5 seconds. So not slow by any means, but she didn't do it with any pressure. She was going at her own pace, and she benefited from it greatly. And another thing is she doesn't have much good back class. The horses she's beaten are not, grade 1 top level company. And I think in a race like this, you got to go with a horse that knows what they're doing, against this level of company. So I'm siding with the 2-year-old champ, British Idiom, in this spot. I think second off the layoff. She has been away for a little bit now, actually. It's been about 2 months or so since she last ran, but I think that she's primed for a big race here. Solid work pattern coming in. I like her a lot in this spot. British Idiom on top for me. Over She Dares the Devil, I love the local track experience for her. Her only other loss at this track was behind the eventual winner of the Fairgrounds Oaks, Bonnie South. Joelle Rosario is winning at 33% at Oaklawn this year. That's a ridiculous number right there. And Brad Cox, you can't go wrong with him. She might be a decent price for second. And third, I think Hardy's Local Oil, also primed to run a big one. Definitely not as respected as I think she would be if there were some easier horses in this race. But she's a really good filly, and I'm expecting a big run for her. But obviously, there's a lot of other ways you could go in this race. That's just my top 3. But take what I've given you. And I mean, I imagine this is a race where some good money can be made if a long shot comes running late, or maybe Venetian Harbor is going to win by 10. We'll find out on Friday. So that'll wrap it up for this preview of the Grade 3 Fantasy Stakes from Oaklawn this Friday, May 1st. I'm Eric DeCoster, and we'll see you next time here on the Racing Rundown.
These three are dominating. Venetian Harbor now kicks it in again. Opens up 3 lengths on Gingham, who's into second. Stellar Sound third. This is the real deal. Venetian Harbor is all by herself as she strolls home in the Las Virgenes. Plenty of promise here as Venetian Harbor completely dominates. Geared down, wins by 9 emphatic lengths.